Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the National Training and Technical Assistance Center. We are so excited to have you here as we join our listening session on Everyday Counts, community conversations on school attendance, where ideas meet action. But before we go any further, we want to know who's in the room. So in the chat, we want you to list your organization, your role, and where you're located. All right, before we get started, we're going to go right into our housekeeping. And so we just want to let folks know, while this event is supported by SAMHSA, the views shared today do not necessarily represent the official views of folks sharing their experiences today. However, they do not represent the official views of SAMHSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. Oh, I love it. I love the engagement in the chat. All right. If we have any glitches or any issues in today's session, we will immediately end and we'll email a new link to join. All right, a special thanks to our wonderful thought partners. These are all the folks that come together to help us, and we utilize their expertise, their subject matter knowledge to help inform the field by creating products, resources, and sessions like this one to enhance the behavioral and mental health field. We're just so grateful to share space with everyone on the screen. All right, and our vision and services here at Intact. So we serve a wide cross-sector audience, including everyone from state leaders to providers to school workforce, infant and early child care providers, community-based providers, peer supervisors, family partners, youth partners, and much more. But our services range from individual consultation to more in-depth sessions like the one we're offering today, to peer learning exchanges and tools to help you. Our aim is really to create those outlets for communication, collaboration, and resource sharing amongst all of us. So make sure to check out all of our resources that are archived under our presentations or go to our contact link so that we can schedule consultation or training for your needs. And just some commonly asked questions that we want to talk about. Everyone will receive the certificate of completion today. Dr. Douglas will be creating an actual research brief at the end of our listening session that we're so excited about. And really, it's going to be anchored in, now what? How do we carry this work forward? Our session is being recorded, and that will be provided in an email right after we finish up today's session. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you all will see a QA option. If you do not see that QA option, I want you to click on the More tab. And once you see More, that's where you can select Q&A. This is where we'll utilize this opportunity to drop in your comments, your questions, because we want to make sure that we're engaging with you all throughout it, but we capture your experiences at the end of today's session. And then last but not least, we're so excited to share with you all our digital digest. And so this is our resource hub for articles, expert advice, and solutions anchored in children's mental health. So when you all have an opportunity, check us out, the National Training and Technical Resource Center, so you can have access to all of these archives that we have for you. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sonia Douglas, who will be leading the conversation today.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon. Well, greetings, everyone, wherever you are. We're so excited to have you join the second in this listening session series on chronic absenteeism. My name is Sonia Douglas. I'm a faculty member in the Education Leadership Program at Teachers College, Columbia University, and I also serve as the founding director of the Black Education Research Center, where we are very much committed to improving the educational experiences and outcomes of Black children and communities everywhere. Today, I have the great pleasure of introducing two dynamic speakers who are going to share more about the work that they're doing to combat and address student absenteeism. But before we do that, we'd like to share a clip that we think is helpful in helping to frame this issue. It is part of a story that was covered by ABC News Nightline on the issue of chronic absenteeism being a very challenging issue for educators and those working in communities since the COVID-19 pandemic.
One second.
The future of America's children is at a crisis point. In 2021, there were 2 million dropouts.
We're losing way too many children. They're either not showing up or they're leaving early and really not having any opportunities beyond that.
Nationwide, for millions of students, a typical school day is filled with too many obstacles. From issues with transportation, caring for loved ones, to depression and anxiety, students are missing school.
The education system is not working for Black and African American students. It's not working for students who may speak a language other than English. It's not working for students with disabilities. It's not working for students who live in poverty. And it's not working for students who don't have an advocate who can make sure that their needs are being met.
Every day, these Compass Peace Builders, as they're called, go out into Hartford.
I have a couple home visits.
Meeting young people where they are.
A youth in the hospital and then a mom.
Offering job training, providing basic needs like food, clothing, shelter, and friendship.
So the question of the day today is, what is an obstacle that keeps youth from going to school or causes them to drop out of school?
I think one of the biggest issues is trauma. We live in a traumatized environment, and our schools are not trauma-informed.
Compass has been working with 17-year-old Raheen Hodges for a year.
Are you in school?
No, not right now.
You dropped out.
Yes.
Why?
To be honest, when I came back from COVID, it's just like felt like school wasn't like motivating me.
Were you absent a lot?
No.
No, you would go every
I
day.
would show up, but I just wouldn't like participate.
What kind of grades did you get when you were in school?
Like C's, D's. And like when I did try, I would get like B's and A's. I feel like they gave up on me because like when I would try, I just wouldn't get the help that I like needed.
Give me an example.
Like they would make me feel like I was stupid. Like I would ask for help and like they would make me feel like I was just like dumb or something.
Thank you. So the problem of chronic absenteeism, which is defined as a student missing 10% or more school days during the school year, continues to present a major challenge for schools and society. According to the U.S. Department of Education, more than 8 million students, or roughly 15% of students across the country, have been deemed chronically absent. This transcends all grade levels and reflects a phenomenon that has worsened since the pandemic, nearly doubling in the last 3 years. And so although educational research has helped to quantify and increase awareness about this issue, we must turn our attention to the role that schools and those who support schools play relative to student attendance, engagement, and success, and who it is impacting the most, primarily children of color, children living in poverty, children with disabilities, and those without housing or residing in public housing. As such, it is imperative that stakeholders across disciplines and sector work, such as those who have gathered here today, are able to work together to strategically foster and nurture the comprehensive systems of care that are essential to culturally relevant, supportive, and affirming learning environments. And so to help us think through how we can begin to really address this issue and support our students in attending school, we have 2 panelists. The first is Tau Hamilton. Tau is a God-fearing husband, father, and mentor to the youth, specifically young men, and he's a former college basketball player. He is also CEO of the Limitless Youth Foundation and Emerging Tech Program Manager for the FBI. And so we welcome Tau Hamilton and look forward to his contributions to today's conversation. We are also delighted to have with us Ms. Dawn Chavou. She is a parent, advocate, business owner, children's book author, connector, problem solver, and the founder of the Education Reform Alliance, which is an initiative created to improve educational outcomes for children and families from underserved communities in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She has over 20 years of experience working in education reform and parent empowerment, providing grassroots strategies and advocacy to create more equitable opportunities for children and families from underserved communities and to ensure zip code and income doesn't limit access to opportunities. And so please extend a warm welcome to Tau and Don. Again, so delighted to have you, and we'll just jump right in to this conversation. The first thing I'll have each of you do is just introduce yourselves, tell us more about who you are and what brings you to this issue of absenteeism. Tao?
Yep, thank you. Of course, I'm happy to be here. Absenteeism and systems of care is something that, is really important to me, and the work that I've done with mentorship and working with the youth. As far as developing leaders for tomorrow, we have to understand, the plight of young people. So, as Dr. Douglas has already introed me and told, a good summary about myself. I'm CEO and co-founder of Limitless Youth Foundation, where we try to partner with young people and their families to kind of give them, systems of not only care, but systems of, being able to traverse, their future as far as the workforce, as far as developing meaningful relationships and understanding their place in the world. So I'm happy to be here. Really happy to jump into this conversation and have a meaningful conversation with the three of you, and as well as everyone who's online today.
Wonderful, thank you.
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much to the National Training and Technical Assistance Center for inviting me to be here. And it's always great to see Dr. Douglas. I am a fan. And I just am really in all of the work that she does and the commitment that she has for our community. So you gave a great intro, so I don't know what more to add to that, except I would just say that, my goal in life is to create more equitable outcomes for children and families from marginalized communities. And, I used to say prior to meeting Dr. Douglas that the house was on fire. And now I know the house burned down. And we need to rebuild education and create a new model of education that works for those of us that are most impacted and marginalized in our communities. And so I've been doing a lot of work that I'm hoping we can talk about a little bit today. So I'm excited about this very important conversation so that we can hopefully come up with some solutions that are that can create a better outcome for students.
Thank you. Given the importance of context, as we're talking about issues of absenteeism, and I know that we've had individuals sharing kind of where they're located across the country. Could each of you maybe share a little bit about the context that you're working in, and maybe help us to understand some of the contextual factors, the issues, the social forces and economic forces that are driving the problem of absenteeism in your particular setting?
Yeah, so I can start if you'd like me to. So I am born and raised Philadelphia. And in our city, we are like one of the largest big cities, still with one of the highest poverty rates. We were about 26%. And that number has not shifted, even with the influx of funds that we received from the federal government after COVID-19. I don't know if everyone on the line is familiar. Lots of cities that were that had high poverty, that were struggling as a result of the pandemic, received a lot of federal and state dollars. And Philadelphia was in that population of people to receive those funds. So I think a lot of times people say, oh, the issue is just money, right? And what I've seen through my own lived experience is that it's not money alone that can solve this problem. You really have to be looking at all of the factors that impact students and families, especially those that are coming from high poverty and from marginalized communities. But in Philadelphia in particular, we have a public school system that has about 197,000 students in it. 118,000 are in traditional public and or alternative schools, and the other 85,000 are in public charter schools, both brick and mortar and cyber. And so you have, whether you're dealing with a public charter or a public district school, what I've found is that they're dealing with similar issues because they're dealing with many of the same populations. And when you look at the Black founded and led schools, which represent about 19% of the charter sector in our city, they're dealing with a high poverty student population, which makes it even more challenging because they don't receive the same amount of funding as traditional public schools. And so that's the context that I'm working in. A city that, you know, is a tale of two cities, where you have some people that are doing really well. We have billionaires that live in our city. We have Comcast, you know, which owns Universal, which, you know, so we have like major companies. But then you have like folks in North Philly who are trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from. And there is this disconnect, which is one of the reasons I wrote this op-ed earlier this year. Like, we all have a responsibility to fix education in our city, because, you know, even though you may be in the high rise and you may not be like in, you know, you may be like, you know, downtown and not in the neighborhood, you know, a child that drops out of school is going to impact you at some point. It's going to impact our entire community. And so we have to break this cycle of, you know, of this repetitious sort of behavior where we just continue to cycle these kids in and out of a system that's not working for them. So does that answer your question? I hope that gives.
Yes, no, I think it's important, again, and even just you describing it as the tale of two cities, right? It's not that one particular context is one certain type of way, but that there's, I think, various ways that people experience a particular city or community. So I think that's important to lift up. Tao, what about you? Where are you doing your work, and what have you found to be some of the contributing factors to students not wanting to go to school?
Right. So I'm in the DMV area, so locally to Ashburn, Virginia. And, you know, our area is a pretty well-to-do area, but of course, in any area, you have pockets of, you know, youth that would rather do other things than, you know, act on their obligations as far as being students or student athletes, right? They want to, you know, do other things. And then you also have some folks that have families that may not necessarily have the means to drive them to school if there's no public transportation, right? Because you know, there's private schools and then there's public schools, and public school has public transportation, but some folks find themselves in our area that have to take not public transportation, I'm sorry, public transportation sponsored by the school district, and then there's public transportation. And some schools, public schools, don't bus to some of the public schools depending on where you live. So you have to take public transportation. And that adds another layer, right, for students to be able to get to school. And sometimes you have students that are missing school at a high rate, and it could be attributed to, hey, my family does not have a reliable vehicle, right? Or my family needs me to work a little bit because we have some things going on in the home where, you know, I can't go to school as much as I need to, right? I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, from Watts, South Central Los Angeles. And in the inner city, there are, just as was mentioned before by Dawn, I mean, there's a whole lot of different programs that have been omitted from the swath of opportunities that you see in other locations for young people to get involved and do things with their time, right? And I think what can be consistent in well-to-do areas and also areas that are not so well-to-do is just the amount of willing mentors to wrap their arms around young people and say, look, this is the way you should go. This is what this looks like. This can also be entertaining and fun too. These are the programs that we have here to draw you in so you understand, you know, what you could be in your future, and then what it takes and what are those steps that takes you to walk that path of maturity to being, you know, what you want to be in life. And if you don't know what you want to be in life, having those mentors and those voices to kind of communicate what your options are and find your passion and find what you're good at. And I think that is something that I really want to lean on today is, you know, speaking with young people, you know, a lot of people, not even young people, adults as well, some folks just don't know what they're good at and they don't know what they're passionate in. And I think when you have young people, one thing that could really break a lot of the revolving door that we have with absenteeism is also speaking to you know, young people and what their passions are, and then giving them, you know, things to do and events and tasks and opportunities, right, to learn and kind of jump in with 2 feet into what that looks like and give them a path. So, you know, in my area, I see a lot of kids who, it's not necessarily they don't have the means to get to school. It's that there are other things that start to, you know, the shiny things that they'd rather do instead of, you know, going to school. And we have to make sure that school is fun and everyone has, you know, a reason to come to school so we could kind of, not force feed, but make it more of a palatable approach to understanding the milestones and being better students and better people.
Right.
Dr. Douglas, could I just add to what Tao just said? Because I think he's absolutely right. There are mitigating factors that are keeping kids from being in school. And earlier this year, when we were doing some data and research to figure out, like, if we're going to solve the problem, we need to talk to the people that are impacted by it. We don't want to just come into a neighborhood and then just say, hey, this is what you should do, and not hear from families and the school community regarding what's happening in those neighborhoods. And what we learned is that there are huge safety concerns for students. So like in Philadelphia, and I didn't mention this earlier, but like gun violence is a major issue in our city. And, there are, used to be like, different gangs. Now it's like different. If you're from a certain block and you have to walk across, you have to go to this block to get to school, you have an issue. And now it's not even if someone has an issue with you, if you're associated with someone that you have an issue with, then they're coming for you too. Because if they can't get you, they're going to get somebody that you know. Which is really a crazy thing, but a reality of many of the youth that are experiencing this today. Also, students believing that they don't belong in school. Like they have no sense of belonging. They don't feel like they're wanted. They don't feel like they're valued. They don't feel like it's a place that where they should be. And then we have an issue with housing insecurity in our city. And as I mentioned earlier, this tale of two cities, we have a lot of gentrification in neighborhoods. And so it's pricing people out of their homes who are indigenous to that neighborhood, who have been there their entire lives. And so with, taxes are growing up, and with that, you have, people that are displaced and looking and that is an impact. And so, those factors, and one other major factor that we're learning is that students need to work. They don't see like the purpose of school, because it's like, okay, reading, writing, math doesn't solve the problem I have today with needing to make money for my family, needing to take care of my younger siblings, needing to have some income. And so like, if we were told a story with one student that, went to Chick-fil-A because, instead of going to school, because they needed to, have income to help their grandmother, so it's like, these are the types of experiences that children are dealing with. And when they don't feel like they belong, when they don't see the value, when they don't see an education, making a difference in the life that they're experiencing in real time, then I think that all factors into truancy and absenteeism.
Thank you. I know we have a protocol of questions, but I'm going to take some liberties here, because I think we've, I feel like we have a strong sense of the issues, because they're really societal challenges, right? There's really nothing new. I think it has worsened again after the pandemic, but transportation, housing, safety, belongingness, I mean, these are all things that I think were issues that contributed to student disengagement, like long before we even knew what COVID was. The question becomes, how do communities organize themselves and rally together to provide that support to students? And so I'm just interested, and I'll start with Dawn this time. What are some of the things that you're hearing that have been effective in terms of local programs, initiatives, something, that could be as localized as one-on-one mentoring, but what have you found or kind of observed as to be some of the promising practices around getting students engaged in school?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So the first thing is like letting students know that you care, right? That you value them, that you see them, that you appreciate them showing up, and that you are not just trying to, placate them when they're coming to school with other issues that they're dealing with, helping them work through some of the trauma that they're experiencing at home and in the neighborhoods, helping them with additional resources and support, not only for the actual students, but the families that they're a part of. I think also what we've found is that has worked really well is like teaching students a skill set that they can apply to a career opportunity as an internship during school, and then as a career opportunity post high school. And I'll just give you an example. Many years ago, I worked in government for a state senator, and there was a company called Sunoco that had a partnership with a local district, William Penn School District, which is right outside of Philly in Delaware County. They were providing internships for students to learn a specific skill and they were offered like $50,000 jobs post high school. Now, all of them didn't take it, but just to think about many years ago being offered, like if I was offered a $50,000 job when I was in high school, I might not have thought about, I might have thought twice about going to college, that could have paid for college. So I think helping students see the light at the end of the tunnel, so that when they're coming in and to school and they're understanding the purpose of the reading, writing, math, that they are actually able to apply something to a career opportunity, where they can learn a skill, I think is really helpful. And that's one of the things we're trying to do with the Education Reform Alliance, connecting private sector partners with public school communities, so that they see all these new buildings coming up. Amazon is one. There's a new Amazon center right across the street from a public high school that does not perform well, has high truancy, but they have no relationship to each other. So they see all these new shiny buildings coming into their neighborhood and they're disconnected from them. We have to change that. And we have to show the students and help them feel that they are valued.
Yeah, and I'm hoping you can share a little bit of the work that you've done, including the town hall convening that you had, where you had individuals from different sectors, whether it's the unions, right, the private sector, who were providing those opportunities for young people, because I think that was definitely an exciting and promising strategy for making those connections.
So you want me to share? I can talk about that now.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go to Tao now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that we do have some time to discuss
awesome.
that. Tao, what about you? What have you seen to be? I mean, you've started your own basically nonprofit to address this. So can you tell us more about the impetus behind that and what you have been able to do and what you hope to accomplish through your Limitless Youth Foundation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that I have seen time and time again, no matter where kids come from, where they live, it is the feeling, and I think Dawn touched on this before, the feeling of belonging, right? A lot of times we have to look at the glass like it's half full, not half empty. And I know that's cliche in itself, but it's very real. Thoughts are things. Like how you think is the things that will come up in your life more often than not. It's not foolproof, but what I can guarantee, and I always tell my kids this that I work with, is I can guarantee you negativity if you think negative, right? I can guarantee that. I can guarantee that you will have more positive interactions than negative if you think positive. So what you can do is how you talk to yourself, that positive self-talk. We've done a lot of work with positive self-talk and developing growth mindsets in young people. But one of the things is, what we really want to do is connect the dots, right? If you don't go to school and you don't have a consistent track record in school, you don't like school, then that means you're probably going to have a really hard time getting to college, right? So we have to bridge that gap and connect those dots. That being a consistent and high level student will get you to higher level education. So we started a college partnership program where we show kids what it looks like to go to school, taking trips, to different campuses, meeting with different folks in the different, admission offices, talking with them so students can see that, oh man, like, I'm sitting here at Norfolk State University. I'm sitting here at, Howard University. This is a cool campus. I'm a student athlete. I'm walking on the football field here. I'm talking with the coaches. I'm walking into the arena here. I'm talking with the coaches. I'm seeing the players. This is what I want for myself. How do I get there? Well, the how is to first step through the doors of school, right? The second part is to excel in school. And then by connecting those dots and having those meaningful conversations with young people and involving mentorship, adults through in the mentorship capabilities to help the young people. Now what you've done is you haven't totally fixed the problem, but what you've done is you have sparked the thought in the minds of young people to say, oh, this is what's possible. Oh, this is how I can get there. There's a micro example of this, not necessarily me being stressed out on the macro, right? So that's what we've done. That's kind of like the most meaningful thing I think that we've done. We do a lot of things for students, hence the name, the Limitless Youth Foundation. We think that all young people are limitless if they've just given the opportunity, the environment to grow and excel. But the college partnership programs, I mean, that has been advantageous for young people to just kind of attach themselves on what's possible and how to get to those places.
And is your foundation focused only on the DMV area, or is it
It's focused,
because
yeah,
of the
focused.
students that you serve?
Yeah, focused in the DMV area, specifically Ashburn, Virginia, but all over DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Like I've volunteered at different places. I've given different talks. I'm also a high school, private school basketball coach. So when you talk about getting kids recruited, this is another part of it because some people think that, or some kids say, if I'm good at a sport, I'll be okay. I'll be able to get to school. I'll be able to be a pro. You can't go play at a higher level until you do what's required. And what's required is the scholastic, task that you have to complete. You got to do what you need to do in the classroom, but you first got to step through the doors of the school, right? So.
As a mother of two former hoopers, well, they're still hooping, but yes, they're not in high school. I understand that. I wanted to also just get some more insight from you. You opened up by saying we must understand the plight of our young people, and just wanted to hear more about what we should know about what young people are going through right now.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, like, Dawn touched on earlier, and it's a big deal of belonging, right? It's understanding that, I do belong here. It's kind of killing that imposter syndrome, right? Thinking that, oh, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm not good enough, right? All those things do is just increase the negativity of self-talk. And we want to make sure that, the self-talk is, we have a thing we say all the time with our kids and our young people. You have to develop. You guys are always walking around talking about talk to me nice, right? Well, you need to talk to yourself nice. So we developed the Talk to Me Nice initiative, where we really tell the kids and really ingrain with them about having a guiding principle that speaks to talking to yourself nice, right? And making sure, and once you start increasing the confidence you have of really having that really important and confident conversation with yourself, it's just so advantageous for the heights that young people can get to.
I love that. And it's something that adults can do as well, right? I mean, we're spending a lot of time talking about the students, and often I'm wondering, are the adults okay? We had Dr. Dawn Brooks DaCosta, who's a deputy superintendent of Harlem Community School District, participate in the last listening session. And, they've been working on a project to really embed culturally relevant, affirming social and emotional learning throughout the district for adults, so that they can actually have the capacity to be able to better meet the needs of students. Dawn, can you maybe talk a little bit about the work that you're doing, again, with a lot of leaders in your community, and maybe, again, around the capacity of adults to be there to provide the supports and the sense of belonging that our young people need?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I became very frustrated with, the state of education in our city, having grown up there and my own lived experience of both private and public school. And then as an adult now raising two young sons under 10, in the public school system, I'm just like, I feel like I'm living Groundhog Day it's like, why isn't anything changing? The same things we were talking about 30 years ago, we're talking about in 2024. I don't understand. Maybe not 30 years ago, because I wasn't alive, but you get my point, I
was
me,
alive, and it's the same.
So for me, it's just a matter of, so I became very frustrated. And so in February, during Black History Month, I had this town hall at our city's largest library on downtown. And it was called, Will You Take a Seat at the Table? And I was just asking, if there was anybody else in the city of Philadelphia that was as frustrated and perplexed, about the state of education in our city as I was. And to my surprise, over 250 people showed up. I mean, it was insane. I did not anticipate. I was going to be happy if one person showed up. I was happy that Dr. Douglas said she was coming. So I was like, once she said she was coming, I was like, okay, great. We'll just have a conversation, and it'll be two of us, and we'll figure it out together. But what I wanted to do was create an opportunity to lift the voices of the people who are often overlooked and not heard when decisions are being made about what to do about education, particularly in our city. And so we, in addition to Dr. Douglas speaking, we also had a panelist of students talking about their own experiences while, they're current students in school, all different types of schools, private, public, charter. We wanted to hear just what similarities and differences they experienced. And it was interesting that a lot of them were going through some of the same issues, no matter what type of school they went to. And in our city, just to give you some additional context, there's always been this debate about what type of school, we should support. And my argument was we shouldn't focus on the type of school it is. We should focus on what the child and the family needs. That's really where our energy should be. And we shouldn't be making choices for parents that they should be making for themselves. And so we had students speaking. We also had parents that had different experiences moving their kids in and out of all of these systems. That was something else we wanted to raise up and highlight as another reason not to focus on the school type and focus on the actual individual child. We also had this Community College of Philadelphia. We had unions represented because we are a heavy union town. We had the mayor there, first female and African-American woman mayor in our city just this year. And so she was there with state legislators and city council members. We also had educators there from different schools types, again, just talking about their experiences and what we need to be thinking about and doing differently. And as a result of that, we created this working group of about 40 people. We have 5 committees, and our goal was really to just determine like where we could we learned, and I learned very quickly, like we can't solve for all things, but we all can do something, right? Each of us has a social responsibility to do something, right? Can't fix the world, but we can do a piece, right? And so we decided to adopt 2 schools in a very marginalized, high poverty area, significant African immigrant population in Southwest Philadelphia. One is a charter school, elementary school. One is a public traditional high school. And our goal, and we've been meeting with the leadership, our goal really is to help them remove some of the barriers that are keeping not only their kids from being able to get to school, but also learn and thrive and graduate with proficiency or advanced proficiency. And what we learned from talking with these teachers and school leadership is, to your point, Dr. Douglas, and I think Tyler, you were saying this too, like there is a huge need for mental health support for teachers.
Yeah.
And what was shocking to me in doing some of my research leading up to this was talking with some school leaders about their teachers laying on the floor in classrooms, during the school day, while students are in their classrooms, because they don't have the ability to manage what is before them. And actually, just before, I'm out of town now, but just before I traveled, I was speaking to a 16-year veteran teacher who told me she had half of her class that were either on medication, IEPs, diagnosed with some, some issue, and she had no support. And she was like, had I not leaned on my experience, I would have quit, And so I think that the same thing I said earlier about making sure students know they're valued, I think we also have to do that for teachers. Exactly. Right. And we need to give them the same type of support that we're giving to the students, because the work is hard. The work is hard. And one of the things we discovered from this town hall and this work that we're doing under the Education Reform Alliance is that in addition to creating this private sector partnership so that students see a light at the end of the tunnel and they see a career path, we also need to provide wraparound services and support. And a lot of that is steeped in mental health support. And I'm glad that we talk about it. We normalized it more now than we did pre-pandemic, but it is a need not only for the students, but also for the teaching staff as well.
Indeed, indeed. Nobody was unscathed, I think, or unaffected by, the world stopping and us still, I think, trying to move on, but really needing to address, I think, the impact that it's had on our mental and emotional health. Tao, anything to kind of add to that? And while Tao's responding. Oh, I definitely want you to listen to his response, but if you have questions, please post those in the Q&A, because we do have time up until the top of the hour to have our panelists answer those questions. So please take a moment if you have a question and drop it in the Q&A. Tao?
Yeah, teachers do need support. I think adults need support. I think what you see a lot is a trickle down effect, right? I think, teachers get overwhelmed, then students become disengaged, and then some students may opt to not be consistent in coming to school, or at least consistent in being engaged in the classroom. An unengaged student means a disruptive student, perhaps. It's just one of those things that there's a lot of different factors, I feel like, to absenteeism. I think it's one of those things where it's not just like, hey, you got to come to school. Okay, problem solved as soon as you start coming to school, right? Because you could come to school and your teacher could be overly stressed, and then she's going to treat you how she feels, right? And not necessarily treat you as, a budding young brain that could help, spark change in the world on many different pathways, right? So it's one of those things where support has to be, given to students, but support also has to be given to the instructors and the teachers, especially teachers who are teaching at the high school level. They're teaching older kids. Kids are getting older, and as kids get older, they think they know everything. They think they're grown-ups. They may choose, ways to communicate that aren't necessarily respectful. And going through that day in and day out, teachers will, start to kind of wear thin, right? And they'll start to become disengaged themselves. So I think it's a 360-degree support situation that is going on, or that needs to go on and take place, when you talk about really trying to spark change in absenteeism.
Indeed, yeah. And I mean, we haven't even mentioned parents and their mental health, right?
Yeah.
And the extent to which we're able to support parents, families, and caregivers. Imagine having 4 children, in elementary, middle, and high, and trying to make sure that they have what they need to get them off to school. So, I'm hearing, and again, from an education perspective, the need for educational transformation across the board, in terms of how we're preparing and supporting teachers and leaders, et cetera. I want to make sure to lift up a question that Natasha Hernandez shared. She asked what to do if there aren't any systems like those that you described in our area. I live in a chronically underserved area and we don't have programs like this. How do you get something like this started? And I just think this is such a great question for these two panelists, because they have taken that initiative to do something about it. And so if you could just tell us, how do you get something like this started? Dawn, if you could start, and then Tad.
Yeah. So I really, honestly, I just prayed about it. I was just like, I'm just going to do it. And I set low expectations. I was just like, if one person shows up, then I'm making a difference, and just taking it one step at a time. But I created it. And the one thing that I'm careful of even now is like building on what exists, not wanting to just kind of reinvent the wheel and have the same, a similar program that's doing the same thing as 10 other programs. And so I think, that's a great question. If you don't see it happening in your community, then start it. And as long as you can get one other person to buy in and support what you're doing, then you're good. It started for me just by putting something on social media, a flyer that said, will you take a seat at the table? Because so often people in leadership make decisions about what is happening in school buildings and in classrooms without talking to the people that are doing the work. Yeah. Without talking to the people that are impacted by the work. So you're not talking to the teachers, you're not talking to the parents, and you're not talking to the students. And that has to change. That's a part of the educational transformation that Dr. Douglas, I think, is talking about, which is why we have to build a new house. Right. And so that would be the answer to, I would just say, you can start small, but you be the change maker in your own community. And we can help you. Dr. Douglas came in Philly and helped me. So I'm a product. I believe in paying it forward. So if I can be a resource for you, I'm happy to do so.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dawn. And to your point, I think it's also asking questions is a great way to get started, to find out what is happening in the community, who are the folks that may be engaging in some of this work, and building from there. So just even from a place of inquiry, I think is a great way to start. Carol?
Yeah, I think asking questions is a great way to start. I would say also, if you're looking around and you ask the questions and you don't see those groups or you don't see those opportunities, local to your neighborhood or your city or your town or whatnot. Um, it starts with just a conversation. Hey, next door neighbor, I need a group for my child, right? To feel welcome. Do you have kids? So number one, and number two, are they involved in anything? Oh, if they are, could I possibly get some more information on it? If they're not, would you like to start something between you and I? We have two kids. We can go take them somewhere. We could give them some meaningful experiences to get them out of the house and learning some things and spending some time. And then, oh, by the way, is there another family that that would have like aged, children? And then before you know it, you have like a little intimate group about, six kids, three, four families maybe, and it just keeps growing from there, right? Maybe someone says, hey, let's make this an actual entity, right? And then now you have, a youth mentorship group or something discipline, right? So I think that's a good way to do it. I always look at, you know, um, from a basketball perspective, right? Like in the amateur um, athletic union, right? AAU. Right now, it's a big booming business. If you go walk maybe 30 miles in a different direction, there's a brand new AAU team, right? But before, when I was in school, in high school, there was only like three teams, right? You play for either the team down the road, or if you're high level, you go to DC and you play for, that team over there, right? Now there's hundreds of teams all over the place, right? And the reason why I say that is because what happened was a mom or a dad, right? Let's either one would say, hey, my son or my daughter is pretty good. Your son or your daughter is pretty good. You guys want to make a team together, right? And then before long, you have a team, you have an entity with another choice. And that's how it happened all throughout. And that's why all these teams started popping up. So, what I would say I say all that to say, talking to one family or another, you could get kids together, you can form your own group. We do a lot of discussions about play dates these days with like age children. You can form a group that way. I think that's a good way to go about it if there's nothing in your area.
I love this very, again, intimate approach, because especially from a research perspective, we're looking at scale and impact all the time. And it's not a one size fits all proposition. So I just appreciate, again, this notion of just reaching out and being able to meet the needs of individuals one by one, and to let that blossom and bloom. I missed a question by Vanessa Pierre that I wanted to lift up. She asked, has anyone considered that one of the issues may be the curriculum? Does the current curriculum engage the student? And I personally would like to respond to that. In that, yes, I think curriculum is so key to student engagement. We haven't talked like specifically about a particular demographic of students, but for Black students in particular, I would say that this is one of the reasons that many of our students are not as excited about attending school, when the content does not really reflect you, your experiences, or your history. And so I am definitely a proponent of that. I don't know if Tau or Don wants to kind of share more about what they have experienced or heard from even students or teachers as it relates to curriculum and its impact on student engagement.
Yeah. You want to go first, Don? Or
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly, again, because I'm talking to teachers, and especially some of our veteran teachers who are very experienced, they're just like, the curriculums are really not designed for the students that they're serving in a lot of instances. And what they end up doing is modifying to meet the needs of the student. The problem is that, depending on what type of school you're in, you can get penalized for it. So that therein lies some of the frustration that some of the teachers have, because it's like, a teacher is saying in her mind or his mind, I know what this student needs. The curriculum isn't providing that, but I know what I can do to help this student grow academically. And therein lies the frustration. And so some teachers I know have gotten it, have accepted the penalization just because, even though they're helping the child, because they know that that is what's going to benefit them. So I think curriculum absolutely matters. And I appreciate Vanessa for raising that up, because it is an extremely important point. And I think sometimes curriculums are set to create doers and not thinkers. especially in our public school systems. And in order to have, we want our children to be able to think. We don't want to just be teaching to the test, and oftentimes that is what is directed of teachers because of funding that comes with test scores. And so it's not really, again, a system that's working for the mass student population of marginalized communities, at least not in Philly.
No, I totally agree, with Don. Curriculum matters, right? Yeah, I think, when you're talking about, students being attached to, what teachers are, going over and educating on in class, the curriculum definitely matters. How you teach, certain subjects matters. The time you spend on a certain concept matters. And sometimes teachers have pressure to speed through one process to get to another one because they may be behind, or maybe that the value of that particular subject matter isn't as important as the next one that they need to get to, right? So there's a lot of moving parts there. My mom was an educator. She was an English teacher at the middle school and high school level, and she's also a writer. And I remember watching her, which is why I have such passion for young people now. Is I used to see her take her class outside to this area close by the school, and they would do their creative writing outside in this like kind of like greenery garden area by the school. And just by her doing that, she had kids that would previously say, I don't know what to write about, I don't want to write, I don't want to do this, I don't think I'm good at writing, to having them being some of the best writers in her class. Because what she did was she met students where they were. She explored the curriculum inside and out, and she modified the curriculum and took the penalization, as Don spoke before, to make sure that she reached her kids, right? And she allowed them to be fully immersed in what she was discussing and teaching on. So I think, when you talk about private school and public school, one thing that I've seen, I'm from public school, right? I did not go to private school as a child, but I am now in private school as a basketball coach, and my two kids go to private school. So when I look at the difference between the two, public school, at least in our area, there is I can't remember what the test is, but it's a test that all kids have to take, and they have to pass it, right, in order to graduate. When I was in school, that test was just like, if you do what you do on it, it doesn't really matter. But now what you have is you have teachers teaching to that test year round. So what happens is they don't have the flexibility, or they don't even exercise the flexibility to meet a child where they are, because I gotta get through this. Because they're going to be tested on this. I gotta make sure I get through all these things. And when you do that and you speed through anything in life, you miss the details, right? And when you're dealing with young people, they also miss the details, because you have kids who learn differently. Some kids are auditory, some kids are visual. Some kids have to put their hands on the information. Some people have to do all three, right, or two of the three. So having the flexibility to teach kids and even have people, right, to teach people and meet them where they are, I think it's extremely advantageous to understand and modify when needed the curriculum that's in our school systems.
Absolutely, thank you. And I put a link to the new Black Studies curriculum that Bert worked to develop with partners in New York City. So it's open access. And so I encourage all of you, if you want to share that with your local school districts and communities. We are excited about what we've already seen in terms of piloting it, in terms of the excitement that students have and their desire to. In some instances, for example, in Brooklyn, a teacher said that there were a lot of students who would just leave to go to basketball. They would miss class to go play. But now that they're seeing content that's engaging them, they're actually, staying and participating. So it really is about the decisions that we're making, I think, as educators and community members, that will allow our students to want to be engaged, as opposed to, I think, trying to fix something about them, or about the reasons that they're not attending school. We had another, I think this will be our last question that we'll take from the chat. It's a question about working with other system partners, such as courts, truancy officials, social services, et cetera. thoughts on best practices to engage those other systems that may seem punitive, but also have a possible resource to help defer truant youth into other supportive resources, services? That's a great question. We often think about schools as maybe providing more preventative opportunities or learning opportunities, and these other systems as being punitive, but they're often serving the same populations, right? So how do we think about working across sectors to help support students? Dawn, thoughts about that?
Yes, so sorry. So I would just say, at least for in Philadelphia, and this was written about in some of our local media, some of the organizations that facilitate or support students through truancy court, and that process, they believe also that the system is broken because they're not solving the root cause of the problem, right? And so penalizing the student doesn't really get them back in school, and oftentimes has, a counter effect. And so, as a result of that, some of these organizations that are doing this work are just like, we need to deal with root causes. And root causes are, again, are students and families that are in poverty, students and families that are dealing with housing insecurity. Like, some students aren't coming to school because they don't know where they're sleeping at night. Like, like understanding those issues, and which is why with Education Reform Alliance, this new initiative that we launched this year, our goal is to identify what those barriers are and then provide them with the wraparound services, so that we can solve for them and hopefully have a different outcome than what you still see. And so I do think that it's important to have partners. That's, again, one of the reasons why I invited. This was a very inclusive process in terms of what I did. I was like, anybody that wants to be a part of this can. We have no pride of authorship. We're not trying to just put our name on something. We want this to be a very inclusive process. And we have a lot of different organizations that are doing a lot of great work. We're all putting input into this. And so I think that it's important to work with other organizations that share your same mission and values and that support some of the work you're trying to achieve. I think one of the challenges we have in our city, which may be, identical or similar to other cities, is like people oftentimes work in silos. And so without that coordinated or collaborative approach, then you, again, don't see the results that you're looking for. You don't see the change that you want to make with the students and families that you're trying to help. So I definitely think partnerships is important. I definitely think working with some of the local government and state agencies that address these issues is important, but we can't take a Band-Aid approach anymore. It's not working. It doesn't solve for anything. You can check a box, but it's not really addressing the heart of the matter. And again, listening to the people that are doing the work, they're saying, like, it's pointless. We need to solve the root cause of why the truancy is occurring. So once we understand that and can provide a solution for that, then we can have a different outcome.
Indeed. We have 2 minutes left. I want to invite each panelist to maybe take 30 seconds if there's anything else you'd like to share to sum up, or maybe just one big point that you want to make sure folks are able to leave this session with.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think everybody, a big takeaway from conversations like this, specifically this one, is just to make sure, I always say give space and grace, right? Give space and grace to the young people in general, teachers, our instructors, parents. Meet them where they are, ask meaningful questions. Don't be so quick to judge. Collaboration is key, making sure that, you communicate, with the different folks that may be, involved in absenteeism and things like that, from students to instructors, to the Dr. Douglas talked about the truancy folks and things like that. You must collaborate. You must understand everyone's perspective so you can get to a better place to help and provide service.
Brilliant.
And
Thank you.
I would just say, it's like, just don't give up, like, stay engaged. The work is not easy, right? But if we don't do it, then who? right? And so I think one of the things I've learned through this process is that I can't solve for all things. Like, I just wanted to start the system over. You can't, it's not possible for one person, but that doesn't mean you can't make a difference. And so, don't think that you have to, solve the whole problem in order to make a change or have an impact. So I would just say, don't give up.
Thank you so much. This has been such an insightful and inspiring conversation. I just want to read what Teresa Allison said. She said, "Thank you. I'm praying for positive changes in education for all our students and teachers." I just wanted to echo that. And thank you for your time. I want to also thank Ashley Singleton and Lisa Knight, who are an example of just making it happen. Again, they reached out when they saw the special on Nightline, and now we have, I think, this very exciting conversation and collaboration that's going to result as in response to their leadership. So thank you all, and I'm going to bring back Lisa. Maybe.
Hi there, everybody. I'm just close. That's all right. We're both working together. Thanks everybody for joining us today. There will be a short survey that's going out. Please respond to that survey. It helps us to learn about the things that you would like to hear more about throughout the year. We offer these trainings and different presentations at no cost to you all year long. So please participate in that survey so we're bringing topics that are important to you. There are resources that all of our panelists have provided. We'll share the recording and these resources to you after this session. And then last but not least, there is a digital digest that we recently released. Think of it as your one-stop shop for resources, articles, information about school-based services and programs. A lot of the things that the panelists and our moderator today have talked about, we share information on how to put those things into practice in this digital digest. So please check that out, share it amongst your network. And we have 2 more of these sessions coming up in September. We hope that you will join us for those. We'll continue to have parent voice on those panels, voice from different school administrators there as well. That's on September the 9th and September the 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So we look forward to seeing you all in September, and have an awesome and wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
And talk to yourself nice.
Talk to yourself nice.
Absolutely.
I love that.